am dedicating this video to Grace, who suggested I make a film on making some of these clocks. And I downloaded some images of some 1930s clocks, and that one up at the top left is actually like the one my mother owned. And so I'm going to speed this up a bit. I'm going to make a few that are very similar. One is going to be a 1/6 size for Barbie dolls, and well, actually two of them that could be for Barbie, and the rest of them are going to be 1/12 size. And this one that I'm working on first is a 1/6 size, and this is just waste foam cord that I've had and a little piece of very thin balsa wood. So I'm going to use up that foam core and double it up and then put a wood face on it and cut that out with an X-Acto knife. And I'm very careful doing this. If you're not used to using an X-Acto knife, I would highly recommend that you use real caution. All you have to do is cut yourself pretty hard once and you'll learn that, but it'd be nice if you didn't have to do that like I did years ago. So I have a method that I use when I use this that I know it looks like I'm going fast here, but this is speeded up. And I apply a lot of pressure with my hands to guide it so that I don't lose control. And I actually take my time doing it. But this is speeded up more than twice as fast as it normally would be. So it does look, like I'm going a lot faster than I actually am. And I'm very careful with it. And I try to keep changing the blades too so that they're always sharp. And I'm just using my favorite wood glue to double them up. And I use a generous amount and put them together with that. And then it's okay if it comes out the ends because I'm going to sand it afterwards. And I'll do the same here for the wood face. The reason why I like to use foam core in the back is because then I can cut out a hole for the clock face and make it more recessed. And I'll just add some weight to it and let that dry. And I haven't posted in a while because I've had an equipment failure. My printer died, so I had to buy another one. And now I'm waiting for the ink to come. So I'm using the clock faces I printed out some time ago. I'm going to use some epoxy. I've got 2 equal amounts here. This is epoxy Sculpt, which is my favorite epoxy to use. It's not real sticky. That's why I like it. And it does seem to be cheaper than some of the other brands out there. At least so far it seems to be. And it doesn't take a whole lot. All the excess I use to make molds. I never waste this stuff. Anything that's extra, I have various molds that I use to push it in. And what I'm doing first is I'm taking one of the buttons that I've chosen as a rim for the clock. And I have this big button jar. You've probably seen it if you've seen my other videos where it's generational buttons. And I use those for a number of different things. And now I've drawn a circle in the middle of both of them. And I'm going to paint with using this jadeite glass color for some of the buttons because I'm going to make various types of clocks. 2 are going to be wall clocks that are for the kitchen or maybe for a bedroom. And I'm going to use this jadeite paint and I'll put several coats on. And that will be the outer rim of one of the clocks. This is going to be a 1/6 size, but it could also be used in a 1/12 size dollhouse as well, since it's a wall clock. And there's this smaller of the 2 mantle clocks. And I'm going to use a button for each one of those 2. And I use a little epoxy to fill in the holes and even it out. And I've already done that with the other one. And now I'll do it with this one. And it's a smaller clock face. And this one, I'll put just a little bit of epoxy sculpt on it just so it doesn't, when I have the paper glued, it doesn't sort of indent into those holes. So I'm just going to use a tiny amount for this. And it takes about 1 minute to mix the epoxy sculpt to guarantee that it hardens the way it ought to. So I'm just going to knead that very thoroughly. And just push a little bit in there. And I'll use the rest for another button. And there, I'm just going to clean it off a bit just to make it level. And then I will let that harden. And I'm going to put some in this one too. That's going to also be a wall clock, and I'm going to paint that the same jadeite green. The reason why I'm painting it is because there's a lot of stains on this button. You can't see it right now, but it's kind of distracting. This one I have to make a little more even so that the clock face lays flat. And I'll trim that up and work it in. Make sure I don't get it into the sort of swirl that goes around the edges so that it clogs it up, because I like that pattern of the button. I've seen people use some of these old buttons to make little cakes and all sorts of things too. So if you have an old button jar or bag or box and you feel like you could use them for something like this, they really are handy. And I like to kind of use the things that I have around rather than buy more. Although I do buy a lot of things. But I do try to use what I have first. And that's why I'm using that foam core for the other clocks instead of making it solid wood. Plus, I need to get a scroll saw at some point. I'm just trying to figure out how to make room for one. I'm just going to go around and poke through the wood to try not to split it, because balsa wood's pretty fragile stuff. So I'll just go around, and then I'll take that little wooden disc out and I'll save that. I might be able to use it for something else. Trying to make sure that there is plenty of room to inset the button with the clock face on it at some point. There, came out pretty easily. And it's not deep enough, so I'll have to go a little deeper. Go right through the foam core. I don't want to go through all the way. I'll just slice it like a pie and then pull out a piece at a time. And that way I won't break anything. And then I'll clean up the edges as I go. And that will fit. I just have to make sure. I'll have to take some of the little bits that are in there out. And I'll carve around the edges too to smooth them out. And I'll do the little one, the 1/12 size. And I'm just going to use a marker to go around it just to make sure I get it centered. And I'll be making more of these clocks as I go along. There's various shapes that I like, and I'll just do those on another day, because they'll be pretty much the same, maybe a bit different shape, but process will be the same. And I'm just going to give that big button another coat of the jadeite color. This is a matte paint, so after I'm done with this, I'll have to put some gloss over it. And I'm going to paint the other little button, wall clock, same paint. I've always loved the jadeite glassware. It's very expensive though. I have a few pieces, but I don't really collect it. But if I see it at a good price, I'll buy it. More epoxy sculpt, because I need to go around the wooden face clocks to smooth them out, make them a solid piece. You see that to the left there, that sword, and then there's a dagger. That's actually for my Auto of the Silver Hand diorama that I am still working on, and I'm getting close to finishing that, but it may be a few weeks before I'm able to make a video on it. I have to get a few things in the mail, like ink for my new printer, and there's a few other things that I have to do with the box, and I'll explain all that later in the video when I post it. And I'm just mixing up more of that epoxy sculpt. I use the tear method where you tear it, push it together, tear it, and then just keep going. And it seems to mix it pretty rapidly and pretty thoroughly. And you can add water to epoxy sculpt to thin it out a bit. And sometimes you'll see my hand go off to the side because I'm getting a little bit of water to put into it. I didn't need to do that here, but if it does get a little stiff, water will smooth it out. And I'm just going to go around, trim that up a little bit. I use the wood face as the absolute guide for it. And now I'm just going to roll some of this out and put a layer around the whole thing, and then smooth it down. And it'll look like a wooden clock after I'm done painting it. And there I'm just putting some water in to smooth it. And this just take a little while to do. It's not difficult, but it does take some fiddling around and getting it into all of those cracks that I've created by doubling it up. I'm not going to put any on the bottom. I'll just sand the bottom. And the good thing is if there are a few cracks in the balsa wood, you can use this to fill those in and strengthen it. I'll just press the edges. And I did see a couple little cracks up at the top, so I'm just filling those in and making sure that they're covered. It'll make it sturdy. And any excess I just take out with the X-Acto knife. And I'll sand this all the way around when it hardens. And it takes about 24 hours for it to harden. But after about 12 hours, you can start working with it, like carving it and sanding it if you want to. It takes actually a full 48 hours for it to become rock hard. Okay, I'll just move on to the next one. This one did have quite a few little cracks at the top because it's pretty thin at the top of the clock, so I'll have to patch that up a little bit to reinforce it with this epoxy. Epoxy sculpt does come in different colors as well. I tend to just buy the gray, but I have bought the colors in the past for certain applications. Since I paint just about everything, it doesn't really matter. It's very paintable, especially with acrylic paints. give it a little trim. And I'm just flattening it on the edges to make it so I don't have to sand it quite so much. I'll just trim the back off here. Otherwise you spend all your time sanding. Nobody wants to do that. Okay. Now I'm just going to take my excess. I already have some in there that were dried from before, and I'll use these maybe on some furniture or whatever. I have uses for these. And I'm just going to take that excess and push it into the mold. You can use paper clay and other types of clay for this particular mold. I'm trying to remember what the name of this mold is. I think it's something like iod or something. I can't remember. But these are very expensive molds. I bought this on Etsy, though it was used. And it was in perfectly good condition, although it had been used. So I paid about half as much for it. It has some beautiful little designs. And there's my bag of epoxy sculpt and milliput frames and bits and pieces. And I'm going to take this little clock face before I put the actual face on it. I'm just going to put some gloss, polymer gloss on it from Golden Paints. And I'll probably do several coats of this too to make it look shiny, as if it were jadeite glass. And that will take a little while to dry. And I hope I don't have to put more paint on these, but if I do, that's okay. I can do touch-ups and add another coating of gloss over it. I'm just gonna give this a little quick run around it with some gloss, these buttons, before I put the faces on them for the other clocks. And that takes about a half hour to dry or so before you can work with it. Now it's about a half hour later, and oh, I'm sorry, not a half hour. Actually, I waited until maybe 12 hours passed. It might have been that long, yeah. So I could sand it. So I'm sanding them with an emery board, and then I will get some 400 grit paper, 400 or 600 grit. I'll just take a look at it and sand them again. And I'm just getting the sandpaper right now, looking to see which one I'm going to use. And I decided to use the 600 grit. So I'm just going to go do the bottom and all around and get this nice and smooth. And then I'll tear a piece off and go into the curved areas. Make sure those are nice and smooth. And then I'll know if I have to add any more. Doesn't look like I'll have to. It looks like I put enough of the epoxy sculpt on. So that's good. This is the 1/12 size clock. And I measured the 1/12. It's, 1 inch to 1 foot. And sometimes using graph paper that represents an inch to a foot helps you to get the scaling properly. And sometimes you can just eyeball it too. I'm not going for absolute realism. I'm trying to keep the style of the Kage doll furniture from the 1930s, because these are going into my Keystone dollhouse from the 1930s. And I'm trying to keep it looking like those objects, which are not going for, as I said, absolute realism. So I'm just going to give a coat of paint. I'm using both gold and Winsor & Newton acrylic here that are mixed. I'm using black and sienna, burnt sienna together to give it a darker brown color. And I just have to give it a couple coats after this coat dries. And that color got a little too dark, so I'm just going to go in there and lighten it up a bit. I'll set that aside to dry. And go on to the next one. And I'm just going to glue in the clock face for this particular button, which is the 1/6 size kitchen clock that I was making. And there you go. And I will give that a couple more coats of gloss afterwards, or if I have to touch it up at all with the jadeite, I'll do that before I give it another coat and then go over it again a couple times with the gloss. And there's the 1/12 size for the kitchen in my dollhouse. And here's the clock face for the larger clock, the 1/6. And I will be very careful this time to make sure that the 12 is at the top. A couple times I've messed up with that, not paying attention. But I'll make sure this time I don't goof that up and have to take it apart again. And this is for the 1/12 size. And now I'll sand the 1/6 size for Barbie. I do have Barbie furniture that's 1/6 size, and sometime I'll post that. I don't think that people in the dollhouse community are as interested in Barbie for some reason, it seems. The houses have to be much bigger, of course, and the furniture. And I only collect Barbie dolls from 1959 through 1965, some 1960 up to 67. But I really like the original vintage Barbies that I had and played with when I was a little girl. I got my first Barbie doll in 1960, and it was a number 3 Barbie. And I have now 2 number 3 Barbies, and then I had some number 4s when I was a little girl, and number 5s. I have my original number 5 Barbie in a wedding dress that I got for Christmas. My mother somehow saved that from me. It was pretty hard on toys. And I have a lot of my clothes that I've repaired since that my mother bought, and some that she made. And I do make a lot of Barbie doll clothes, which I'll show off and on in the future. I just love dolls anyway. I love all dolls, especially the vintage ones and the antique ones. And I'm just giving that a sand on the edges to flatten it out a little better. Make sure that it's smoothed down. I'm still having trouble keeping within camera range. One of these days I'm going to make myself do this, even if I have to put a bullseye down on the work table. I'm just sticking that knife in there so I can paint it. That's another nice thing about the foam. And I'm just mixing that dark brown color again with the black and the burnt sienna. Same paint. And this will have to have 2 coats of paint too. I'm not going to put legs on these clocks. These are just going to rest on top of the whatever mantle they're put on. And I'll put that aside to dry too. And since that gloss is dry already, I'm going to give these another coat. I will touch up all of the paint in the end on all of these pieces and then go over it again with another coating of gloss. I like this golden gloss. It's really nice stuff. Okay, now let those dry and they're ready to have another coat. So I'll just do that. I mixed just enough paint to use it up. I had it covered. You just didn't see how quickly I put it out there because the way this is cut, this film. So I have a little cap for the top of this particular little thing here. And I'll clean it out later and it can be used for something else. Nice thing about acrylic paint is often you can just peel off the paint off plastic. So those are dry. And I'm going to paint the back of that. And these can be hung with something like museum wax or some other type of putty that can be removed instead of putting a hole in the dollhouse wall. Okay, now I'm going to use these mini decals that I found at an antique store. And these are very small. They're old too. They're yellowed. So I hope they work. I haven't done decals in years, but I'm going to do what it says on the back, dip them in water and slide them off. I hope it works. We'll see. I want to put some flowers on the clocks. And I just dipped it in water, but it is not coming off. It's just not working. Nope. It just isn't going anywhere. It's breaking up, in fact, so I'm going to have to try again. So I'll just put that away, cut out another one, and see if I can let it sit a little bit longer. It says it only needs 2 seconds, but it looks like it needs longer than that to make it so it slides. So I have these 2 little pieces here. These are like roses, and I'm going to put one on each corner. I'm just seeing if it's going to fit on this smaller clock. I want to put a little flower on each corner. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working. Oh, there, I got it. I got them both on. I'll see if I can readjust them before they dry. Oh, it fell off, and I really had trouble with this one, but it did finally stick. I had to put a little water on it. I know it's hard to see them, but they do brighten up as they dry, so I'll show that later. And then I scratched some of the paint off of the clock. Now this is a Kage, original Kage clock with a decal on it. I got this at an antique store with a bunch of other Kage furniture, so that's why I'm putting these decals on. Okay, I'm going to try this. Actually, that was the bigger clock. I put that on. I mean, on the smaller clock, I'm going to put just one decal on the middle bottom. But first, I took the face out. I'm going to try to let this one sit a little longer. See if I can slide it off. I'm going to dunk it again. It's still not coming off. I don't want to break it up because there it went off. Oh, okay. I hope I can center that. And you can't see it very well now, but it will dry and brighten up. I'll show that to you later. I hope I got it centered. And I'll just put those away. That other little clock you see up there was the original one I made with legs on it. I don't know, I must have made that about a month ago already now. I'm going to glue the face in. And I'm just using tacky glue because it dries clear, and there. Push hard. Get it in there. I try to cut these pretty much to size so you don't have too much of a rim around the outside. Now there's the other two, and that's the original one I made, the first clock I made. That's the 112 size, I'm sorry. Okay, now they're done. And you see how they dried brighter? And there's two little roses. I put another coating of gloss over it, and it's not completely dry. You can see the white. I just wanted to show these, but I did, you see it's not dry, the gloss, but I went over it, and I noticed that one was not quite centered somehow. So what I may do is cut out another rose and put it on the left side to balance it out, but I'll do that another time. And then I finish these up with another coating of gloss paint, with the jadeite paint, and those are kitchen clocks. And there again is the grandfather clock I made based on the Kage grandfather clock with the graphic. And I showed that before, and there's the first clock I made that I put legs on. It was like the one, kind of like the one my mother had when we were growing up in our house. It's very similar. And there's the Kage with the original decal and decal on the face. Grace, I hope you saw this video. I dedicated this to you because you wanted to see a video on the clocks. And someday I'm going to get a scroll saw and make some of these out of solid wood. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll be having more soon. And thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.